Good morning. So after I moved here about 15, 16 years ago, I started telling some friends, I'm going to hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim. I had no business saying that. And they all knew it, but they, played along. And one of the people who heard about this was Dave Garrison. He's part of our church. He was then, he is still now. And he wanted to show me how ridiculous that idea was, I think. So he organized a hike of a few people that we were going to go down at the Grand Canyon to have a Supai Gardens and then back up. So it's 4.5 miles down, 4.5 miles up, straight up. If you've ever been there or you've even looked over the edge, you just know what that looks like. So there I am on the Bright Angel Trail, and I'm there with Dave, and then some other folks. Dave and Janet Ruhlman were there, and Brad and Sarah Dorman. I mean, a bunch of them were actually in this service, and maybe some other folks. I can't remember because most of the day I was just hallucinating, I think. And I had a backpack, right? So like if you're going to go 9 miles and spend all day hiking, you take stuff. And so I had my backpack, and Dave number one had said, hey, you need to make sure you have lots of water. But I don't know if you've hiked much. Water's heavy. I mean, a gallon of water weighs over 8 pounds. I mean, it's heavy. And so I had that, but I also, I brought some Gatorade. I got to make sure. And I brought like some energy bars, like a bunch of them, and beef jerky. Maybe you're seeing the theme here. I had trail mix. I mean, I brought a Subway foot-long sandwich. I really did. Actually, I think we all did. And I thought, well, you got to have Band-Aids and sunscreen, all the stuff. But we got to the bottom, and we got to have a Supai Garden where, the end, then we're going to go back up. And I remember, every so often as we're walking back up, Dave number two keeps asking me about how heavy is your backpack, Chris? Is it getting lighter? And I just kept thinking, yeah, it should be getting lighter because I'm eating some of the stuff, like the sandwich is gone, some of the water's gone. Why isn't it getting lighter? It feels like it's heavy. It actually feels like it's getting heavier. Well, I was like, well, we're going up. That's probably what it was. And he kept asking about it. I was like, why is this guy so fascinated with how heavy my backpack is? But I just wasn't thinking straight at all. And I remember we're sitting at one of the stops and sitting on a rock or something, and we're taking a short break, our group, as we're hiking up. And it's hard, that hike. The Bright Angel Trail up is no joke. And I had no business being on it. And Dave number one, who actually we could call Nice Dave, he says, Chris, what else do you have in there? And I'd pulled all the stuff out that I had left, and he's like, what's under your jacket? Because I brought a jacket in case it rained. Like you're supposed to bring a jacket when you do this sort of thing. And I looked down and was in shock to find one of these. Remember I said one Dave was Nice Dave? Well, the other Dave, no wonder he wanted to know how it felt, right? This whole series, what we're going to talk about, this topic of forgiveness is, we go through life. And if it's like a hike or a trip, we got stuff we have to have that we're already taking along with us. There's just the necessity, the stress, the burden of just regular life. And then when you and I don't forgive someone, we're putting a rock in our backpack. Maybe your rock looks just like this one. And just before anybody starts tweeting out that I stole a rock from the Grand Canyon, this is from University Heights. The Grand Canyon rock is still there. Or at least I left it there. Because do you want to keep carrying that around? Maybe your rock's different. Maybe yours is bigger. Maybe it's heavier, it's more dense. Maybe you got a bunch of small rocks. A bunch of small things that you're just not forgiving people of, and you're carrying them around. But you could leave it behind. That's what we're going to dive into these next 4 weeks about forgiveness. What it is, what it isn't, why we need to do it, how, who, and this These sermons, these conversations we want to have together and resources, there's things in our app. I forgot to mention that last service, so you get the bonus. There's some really important resources there. This isn't going to be solved the next 28 minutes that I have left. That's not how it works. And not even just the 4 weeks, but all 4 weeks build upon each other and they work together, so you need to be here. Or at the very least, make sure you watch these on YouTube if you're not going to be here. Because this topic touches all of us. And honestly, more than it touches all of us, it bothers nearly everyone. The idea of forgiving people who've wronged us bothers us. And if you don't admit to that, you're just like, are you really thinking about it? It does bother you. Because when we think about forgiving someone, we go to questions like, do we really need to? Well, and if so, why? If you're saying yes, Chris, why do I have to do that? And how does that even make sense? How do I forgive that person? They don't deserve it. You don't know what they did. In fact, they didn't even ask for it. I said once to my sister, we were talking about forgiveness, and I'm like, hey, he doesn't even ask for forgiveness. You don't have to worry about it. And we were talking about it because I told her I was going to share this topic, and I was like, man, that was bad advice. I shouldn't have told you that. People don't even know sometimes that we need to forgive them. How do we do that? And if I want to, how could I? Those are the kind of questions we're going to dive into these next 4 weeks, and we're going to try to answer them as best we can, but you have to be here. And we're going to start with where I always try to start, where all of us try to start. It's the name of the church, Christ Church. So let's start with what Christ said. Jesus Christ of Nazareth says, you have heard it said. You have heard that it was said. So this phrase he uses in the Sermon on the Mount is he's pointing to an Old Testament statement. Love your neighbor, hate your enemy. And that phrase in the Old Testament is getting twisted by the time of Jesus in its teaching and interpretation of the Jewish religious leaders. That's the norm in his day. Someone's good to you, you love them. Someone's bad to you, your enemy, you hate them. I would say we haven't progressed much as people, right? Someone's against you, they're dead to me. We live like that. The problem is the next word, but. Jesus, who, if you claim Christianity, you claim you want his grace and salvation, he's your Lord and King. So your King says, I tell you, not the cultural norm, hate the people who are against you, hate the people different than you, hate the people who have hurt you, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. We have to forgive. Or as Paul the Apostle says to the Christians in Rome who are about to undergo severe persecution for just following Jesus, he says, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends upon you, live at peace with everyone. Notice this word, it's really important. It calls it evil. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. What's happened to you, what's happened to me, it's evil sometimes. If there's a need to forgive someone, they did something wrong. And I think sometimes we look at forgiveness and think it's going to condone wrong. And God himself, through Paul's writing, says what happened is evil. Well, how could I ever forgive? What was done to me was wrong. It was evil. Yeah, that's what the Bible's calling it too. We forgive. We're not saying something wasn't wrong. We still need to forgive. Acknowledging evil, wrong has been done. We just have to. And I'm not saying this, I'm not trying to be trite when I say that, and I don't say it lightly. And what I know is that unforgiveness is a rock. It's weight you carry. And And I know that if we can learn forgiveness together, we can do it. God's help. We don't have to keep carrying the rock. And I don't know what it is that yours looks like. I don't know what it is you need to forgive, who it is you need to forgive. Like I said, one big rock, a bigger rock, or a lot of small ones. Several medium-sized ones. I don't know what happened to you. I'm sorry that it did. And I wish that it hadn't. But I know what happened to me. I know what's happened to my family. And as I share a little bit about that and how forgiveness has been experienced, it's not to compare. Like when you talk about the rocks you're carrying, we don't need to have a contest. Who's got the worst one, the biggest one, the smallest one, the most? They're all evil. The things that hurt us that we carry around, they're wrong. For me, it revolves mostly around my dad. He was abusive to our family, emotionally, psychologically, and later, he was sexually abusive to 2 of his grandchildren. For me as a kid growing up, love, approval, peaceful home, we're all dependent upon my mom and us kids managing his emotions, making sure he was happy. For instance, how it would play out often as a young child, you tell your kids to go clean your room. My dad and my mom would say, go clean your room. They'd show up later, it wasn't clean. The conversation always ended with, well, if you loved me, you'd clean your room. Well, why don't you love me? It's not clean. And I wish there was some way I could go back to 7-year-old Chris and help him understand and articulate. My room wasn't clean because I found my G.I. Joe toys and I started playing with them. I'm 7. This isn't a conscious decision involving my lack of love for you, Dad. But you can't go back and do that kind of stuff. You know that. The emotional manipulation, you don't always even notice it, especially as we're young. None of us in our family knew any different way of life. But the impact, and you can relate to this in different ways, in your own way, the impact to my mom and us, my 3 siblings, is long-lasting. Each of us still today live with these wounds and with the defense mechanisms we learn to emotionally guard ourselves, to just be able to live in that system. From the outside, it looked very different, I imagine. We went to church every Sunday morning. Our church had a Sunday night service. Back in the day, we had a Wednesday night service. We were at all of those. For a long time in my childhood, my dad also taught Sunday school. No one had any idea how different life was like at home than it was everywhere else. My dad had multiple affairs, which I didn't know about at the time, but could just see the stress that existed between him and my mom. That was obvious. He would lose jobs often, putting financial strain on us. When we had extra money, he'd spend it all plus some. When we didn't have money, he found some way to transfer that stress and pressure to us. Like, well, how dare you want some new shoes for school, sort of thing. And as I said, his abuse over time, it shifted. It shifted to his grandchildren and became sexual in nature. And when I came to find out that part of that, one of those were my kids, as he lived with us for a season, and that rock that was already there from all the other things, it got really heavy. And some of you carry that sort of a rock. It's incredibly heavy, and you know that. And if you don't carry that level of a rock, I hope you don't. But the wrongs that have been done to you, the places where unforgiveness just feels unrealistic. You're like, I've moved on, I didn't even think about it. Well, that's not the same. We're going to talk about what it is and isn't. The wrongs done to you, they weigh you down. And forgiveness isn't just for the worst things, it's for all the things. Right? Because you realize a whole bunch of small rocks equal big rocks. The small things matter too. When it came to forgiving my dad, I had to wrap my mind around even questions way before forgiveness. Like, God, why did you let this happen? Why didn't I see what was going on at my house? And I spent a lot of time struggling with blame. I blame myself. It's like, it's probably my fault. I didn't do anything. I didn't know it was happening. But it was easy for me to blame myself because that was the system I grew up in. Everything was somebody else's fault. Everything was my fault. And then even the questions of forgiveness. Why would God want to forgive this evil? How could I do that? How can I forgive him? What would that even look like? It's been a journey. Like I said in our app, there's resources and there's a list of mental health counselors. People just walk it with you. Our prayer team will be in the back at the end of this service. We're talking about things. It shocks me how few of us will go and pray with someone after service when during the week we hear about the things happening in each other's lives. I don't know what the journey is going to look like for you, but it'll be a journey. And to begin, I think we have to grasp and just be really honest. What is forgiveness not? Because I know for me and for many people I talk to, like misunderstanding forgiveness holds us back immensely. It makes it more challenging. And so what is forgiveness? What it's not is not forgetting. I think we hear that, just like forgive and forget. Phrases like cliches like this. Like any cliche around forgiveness is probably horrible. It's also not condoning. We just talked about it. God calls it evil. We're not condoning this when we forgive. We're not forgetting because let's be honest, you can't forget. You can't erase memories from your mind like that. We just don't work that way. And if you try to just forget and act like something didn't happen without truly going through the process of forgiveness, someone said it's like trying to hold a beach ball under the water at the pool. It's going to pop back out. It's not forgiving. It's also not passive. I mean, just look back at the Romans 12 passage we looked at. As far as it depends on you. That's not a passive statement. That's a statement of action. As far as it depends with you, live at peace with everyone. Well, you can't live in shalom and peace with someone you haven't forgiven. And you hear another cliche, time heals all wounds. I've even probably said something similar to this at different points in my life. Well, that was baloney. It doesn't. Forgiveness isn't just waiting for the pain to stop and then you move on. Time helps wounds heal, but that's not forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't waiting. It's not passive. It's not waiting for the other person to say, I'm sorry. We look at Romans 12 and all of what Jesus has said about forgiveness. If you are a Christian, if you are a Jesus follower, you don't get to just wait for forgiveness to magically happen. It won't. You have to actively pursue it. At some point, if you become a Christian, you're taking on the responsibility to take initiative and forgive people. That's what our King, Jesus, says. Because he knows we're carrying this around, that forgiveness is actually better than the way we're doing it. You don't need an apology before you forgive. Like all these things we hear people say. Well, they're still doing it over and over again. I know. We can't be passive. It's also not kiss and make up. This is my favorite misnomer of forgiveness. It's not my favorite. That was sarcastic. We hear versions of this all the time. You're in a situation, one version of this are those people who love to do something wrong and then like next time you see them, they act like nothing happened. I mean, some of us are those people, unfortunately, too. There's a problem, there's hurting feelings, and then we're just going to pretend like it's over? That's not forgiveness, that's kiss and make up. And also, sometimes we avoid forgiveness because we're like, if I forgive them, then I have to hang out with them, I have to be around them. That's not it either. That's not the same as forgiveness. There's people you forgive that you don't spend time with. My dad's one of those people. He's not in my life. I have completely forgiven him. I know that to be true. But he's not safe. It's not wise to be around him. So I'm not. Forgiveness isn't kiss and make up. It's also not just words. If you raise kids, you've seen this scenario. I remember when our son was little and he hit his sister. And I would say to Jake, tell your sister you're sorry. I'm sorry. Susie, tell him you forgive him. I forgive you. Those are words. Does anyone think their hearts were transformed and set free of the offense that had taken place? No, because as soon as I leave the room, she's punching him back. We're the same way. It's so much more than just saying, I forgive him. Maybe that's where you start. It's not just words. I wish it was just words when I'm the one who needs forgiveness. I so wish it was just, I'm sorry, and then everything's better. That's not how this works. It's not that. What is it then? Well, I think it's releasing my hope first for a better future or a better past. I think a lot of our inability to forgive stems from thinking about what could have been, what should have been. But part of forgiveness is accepting this is what happened. Being honest about it, being honest about the price that it cost, about the impact that it had, the ripples in your life and in other people's lives, and that we can't change it. I wish we could. Wish I could go back to a different past, but I can't. I'll never be able to. And so forgiveness starts with releasing my hope for a better past. The past I got is the past I have. We need to do this not only because we can't change it, because if you and I continue to hold on to the past and this bitterness of what's happened and what should have been different, why couldn't it have been different? When that thought consumes us, it ruins our future. I've experienced it. I watch it time and time again. And when we forgive, it doesn't change the past. It doesn't condone it. It doesn't forget it. But it embraces it and acknowledges it. And when we can do that with our past, we can change our path. We can change our future. What happened doesn't change, but I can stop thinking about it the same way, and it allows me to create a better future. It's releasing my hope for a better past. It's also releasing my right to retaliate. And I'll be honest, for many of us, this is the reason we don't forgive. This right here. We want to hold it against them. We want payback. We want the account. I mean, a wrong has been done. A debt has been incurred by someone against you. We want payment. It doesn't work that way. Forgiveness is releasing that. And I'm going to talk more about what that means, why we can do that next week. We're expecting something to be repaid. The person can't repay. You know how I know they can't repay it? Because I can't repay my debts. The things I've done wrong, I can't pay for those. You can't pay for the ones you've done to me. And we want revenge. We want retaliation. That makes sense to us. We equate it with justice. Jesus calls you and I to something different, something better, actually. I mean, look what he said. And this is only applicable if you follow Jesus. If you don't, this is what you're signing up for. He says, you've heard that it was said, again, an Old Testament statement. This is actually in Leviticus, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Now, the next Christian that quotes that to me, condoning something, I might slap you, but then I'll have to repent. But you have to turn the other cheek. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You hurt me, I hurt you. Literally, quite literally, you broke my tooth, we're going to take out your tooth. You gouge out my eye, gouge out your eye. was the old way. This is like the natural way of humanity. The animal kingdom runs on eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Jesus says, not you. Do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Give up your right to retaliate. So want revenge. This is unnatural. It's unfair. Did Jesus say, like, fair? It is. It's unreasonable to expect you to forgive the friend who's betrayed you and hurt you deeply. It's totally unreasonable. It doesn't make sense for a husband to forgive his wife for what she did with his best friend. It's unfair. To ask a mother to overlook the many offenses her teenage son has caused and committed, forgiveness is difficult because it's unfair. Which is why we have to release these things and experience the power of Jesus in my life. It's not natural. It's not how we're wired. It's not fair. It is unfair. But also, it is unfair how God treats me. How he's chosen to treat you. That's not fair. He doesn't treat us with fairness. He treats us with something totally the opposite of fairness is grace. Grace means giving someone the opposite of what they deserve. That's what I've experienced with God. Jesus forgave us for how we've wronged God, for our sin. He doesn't carry this around, my sin. It's not in his backpack. It got dropped at a cross. And he didn't do it when I asked for forgiveness. He didn't do it when I said, I'm really sorry, or when I stopped. There was no contingencies upon it. The Bible puts it this way. Paul writing to those same Christians in Rome, you see, at just the right time, when Chris was still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. When we were powerless, all of us, Christ died for us. Because who's the ungodly? Not just the people who we have rocks against. Yeah, they're ungodly. So am I. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So when God says that his followers need to be people who forgive, it's because he's someone who forgives. He asks us to forgive, to release our right to retaliate. He's just asking us to do what he's done for us. And he's not asking us to do it on our own. The power of Jesus, the power that Jesus saves us, also allows us to move into forgiveness. It's not easy. But here's the dynamic of his power that I've noticed, this pattern in Scripture. And I see this pattern in my life and the lives of people around me, is that power is released when we take action. What I think we often try to do is like, hey, I'm going to hold on to this, Jesus, until you give me the power to let it go. And I just wait. And I wait for some miracle. The miracle already happened. He died on a cross and resurrected. The power is here. It's just, Jesus' power is often, I see this, like when I go forward with it, I start to experience his power when I start to step in to, in this case, forgiveness. Whatever it is he's asking me to do to follow him, his power is released when I actually do it. Maybe it's released when you like start looking at scripture about forgiveness, or in the app you look at one of those resources, or you just sit with a therapist and you have your first conversation about what happened. With a friend, I don't know, or a prayer. But you start to take those steps, you start the journey, and his power is released into our lives in this situation. Because do you want to keep carrying around the extra weight? I mean, how silly would I have been that day sitting on that bench to go, oh, this is a cool rock, and put it back and carried it all the way to the top. No way. Lighter? It's way better. How can you forgive people you don't want to, but you need to? That's what we're going to talk about the rest of the series in these next 4 weeks. And the part, more than anything, and in my journey of forgiveness, which continues to have to happen all the time, so many tools and people have been a part of it, but the number one thing that I had to continue to go back to is God's forgiveness of me. That he reached for me. That when I weep, when hearts are broken and lives are shattered, his heart is broken. He weeps. He feels shattered. That his son Jesus went to a cross. That he bled for me. He bled for you. So that more than anything, we could experience his forgiveness. When we celebrate communion every week together, as we're going to in this moment, we have these items in this container, a piece of bread that reminds us of Jesus' body, this juice that points to his blood, his perfect blood, his life lived sinless but given for you and I. That is how forgiveness comes. It's communion to remember God's love, his forgiveness for us, so that we could receive his grace, what we don't deserve. He gave up his right to retaliation. And so what we're going to do for the next couple of minutes, actually technically 3 minutes, is just going to reflect. What is it I'm carrying? What is it that's been forgiven of me? And all things that I've shared or you've heard or you've been feeling and processing, I just want to give space for that. The scripture that we looked at earlier is going to come back on the screen. What do you need to do with this today? It's not the end of forgiveness, but I hope it's a start. And during this time of reflection and just processing, whenever you want to take the bread, remember his body, you want to drink the juice, remembering his blood, just do so. Maybe you want to do it with the people around you as you pray together. But this is just our time to reflect and ask God, what do you have for me next? And then after the time, Dennis and the team will come and we'll worship Jesus together. God, guide us. Let us know your heart right now for us as we reflect on our forgiveness. We reflect on Jesus' death. Guide our thoughts.